Welcome to A Seeking Heart with Allison Gingras, distributed through Breadbox Media and recorded live on Facebook. I am very excited to rejuvenate A Seeking Heart, going back to my roots, back to books. I love Catholic books. I love spiritual reading. And there's so many good books out there that I just felt this call in my heart to get back to where I started and to share awesome Catholic books with you, and to revisit visiting with the authors of these amazing books. So in Monday's show, we looked at Manual for Women from TAN Books with author Danielle Bean, who is now with us to talk a little bit about Manual for Women, her process. She wrote the essay that launches this wonderful book. And then, as I said on Monday, it ends with just incredible prayers and scripture verses and the popes and saints and all the good Catholic stuff. But we'll get to that as we go along. Hold on, my computer decided it wants to restart. Please don't do that, computer. Okay. If you are joining us live here on Facebook and you have anything to ask Danielle, please just put it in the comments. One of the things Be Live TV does not, however, do is tell me who you are. So if you'd like to, until we go back and look at the video, but if you'd like Danielle to know you're here, please include your name in your comment, and any questions you have, just throw them at her. I don't care if they're hard questions. I'm going to put her on the spot. Danielle, welcome to A Seeking Heart.
Now I'm nervous. Thanks, Allison. I'm happy to be here.
I can do that because we've known each other for a very long time. God was just so gracious to introduce us way back when we were homeschooling moms, just dreaming about entering women's ministry and sharing Him with other women. So Danielle, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing these days, and then we'll jump into Manual for Women.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm a mom and a wife, so I've got 8 kids. They range in age from 12 to 24, which is crazy to me to think my baby's 12. So I'm in a different phase of life. So that's why I'm able to take on projects like writing books and that sort of thing. So I live in New Hampshire with my husband of 25 years this July. And so what I do full time is I work from home, and I work for an organization that's called Holy Cross Family Ministries, which is Father Patrick Peyton, Venerable Father Patrick Peyton's ministry, continuing on today. The famous priest who said, "The family that prays together stays together. A world at prayer is a world at peace." He's our kind of guide, right? So with Holy Cross Family Ministries, I'm working on CatholicMom.com. I'm manager there. It's been a new position for me for the last year and a half almost. I can't believe I've been there that long. But I'm just thrilled to be a part of that organization. And really, after years of being in magazine publishing, coming home to Catholic Mom just feels so great and so right, because it's really getting back at the heart of why I got involved in women's ministry at all. You were referencing way back when, Allison, and we've taken kind of different paths, but we're always kind of just bumping into each other in various ways through Catholic media. And, after years of being in publishing, I was really ready to come back to the heart of what I feel like God has put in my heart to do, which is serving women. And it's a beautiful opportunity to do that through CatholicMom.com, through the ways we share with social media, through our new podcast there that you co-host with me on occasion, Allison, the Catholic MomCast. So that's my work life. But my work life and my family life have always just kind of been seamlessly blended together. And that's one of the blessings that I have, is being able to work from home.
My spiritual director used to say that the intertwining, because I was obviously a practicing Catholic, and my job has become Catholic ministry, that they just so intertwine my family, my my career thoughts, and my spirituality. And he said, sometimes I just wish you had just picked raising Cocker Spaniels. It'd be so much easier to be your spiritual director.
I like that. That's cute.
They do really intertwine. And talk about Father Patrick Peyton. Last night I was watching the show Schooled, being a girl of the 80s and the 90s. Mm-hmm. I really love the Goldbergs and Schooled. And yesterday they quoted Patrick Peyton, the family that prays together stays together. Of course, they tweaked it a little bit, but I was like, oh, he's so awesome.
Oh, that's so great. I didn't know that. Cool.
It was really fun. And I really thank you for allowing me to be on Catholic MomCast with you. It's just an honor. And I will have the links for everything that we talk about in the show notes, as well in the comments after we finish recording. So it's really wonderful just to have you here and to chat about this wonderful book, Manual for Women. Now, I'm a Portuguese woman and half my family is named Manuel. So do you know how hard it's been for me to not write
Manual for Women.
Exactly. I have caught myself more than once going, no.
That's hilarious. I love it.
Only a Portuguese woman would see this. my Portuguese brain. So, Danielle, how did it come about that you were part of this amazing project?
Yeah, well, I was honored to be a part of the project. So a couple of years ago, I was at a women's conference and I happened upon this little book that looked a lot like this, but it was brown and it was a manual for men. And I leafed through it and it was written in the front part by Bishop Olmsted out in Phoenix. And I just loved everything about the way this book was set up. I loved the essay by Bishop Olmsted and I was like, I'm buying this for my husband. So I bought it as a gift for him and brought it home and he loved the book. And my husband, you and I were like Catholic book junkies. He's not. Like, he's not. And it's not something he'll do. So it really said something to me, like he was willing to take this book and spend some time reading it and really appreciated it for what it was. So I was very familiar with that. And so when TAN Books reached out to me and said, you familiar with our manual series? And we'd like for you to do the women's one. I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I absolutely love those books and I would love to be a part of the one for women because of course my next thought after giving that to my husband was, where's the women's one? Little did I know I was going to be creating that. So it's been fun to do and it's been a great project working with TAN Press. I haven't worked with them previously. They've been great to work along with and they helped me out. A lot of people were like, because I just had a book that you and I talked about a little bit previously that came out in the fall and people were like, this book coming out in the spring. They're like, when did you even have the time to write that? And it's kind of cheating, right? Because it's just a front essay. It's just the first part of the book is written by me. So, but the second part is this beautiful collection of prayers. And I had a lot of help and a supportive team over at TAN to help me to put that together.
And before we jump back into this, tell us a little bit about just the other books that you have. I'm going to link to them, but because I think that this is probably why TAN felt you were a perfect match for this, because your books, Danielle, really do speak to the heart of women, to, that they're worth it, and that they are, what women are called to be yourself, and that authentic femininity. So just remind us of your other books. So
sure. The ones related, so several years back now, I wrote the book Momnipotent with Ascension Press, and that had a parish study, which is still available. And I still hear from people doing this study, and I absolutely love it. It's an 8-week study, but it's also just a book, a standalone book that you can just pick up and read. And inside of that book, I really look at those gifts, those unique feminine gifts that we have as women that God gives us, and the ways in which we're meant to use those to serve our families, to serve the world, ultimately to serve God and building his kingdom here on earth, and then to live with him forever in the next world. So really just going deep into, but not in a deep theological way, those teachings of St. John Paul II on theology of the body and why it matters that we're female, why that's an important part of our identity. What does that mean? How does that look as a whole for women? But how does that look uniquely, individually, personally for each one of us, the unique ways that God calls us as women? So that book was my first kind of delve into that. And I loved it. Ascension sent me to the Theology of the Body Institute to take a week-long course down in Pennsylvania. Oh, and wow. I became one of those people who's walking around like, theology of the body, like it was great. So that really was life-changing for me. And so sharing those ideas inside of Momnipotent, which is just a funny, cute little word that I kind of coined to really hammer home the idea that this is how we're strong. These ways that God built us uniquely as women are ways that we're strong. We're uniquely strong in these ways. And we find lasting happiness and fulfillment and peace and balance and all those things we say we want we find inside of fully embracing our real identities as women, which is going to look different for every one of us, but there are things we have in common. So that's really what I love to focus on. And then in the next 2 books, I looked at some biblical characters, women from the Old Testament, women from the New Testament, in You're Worth It and You Are Enough, kind of drawing that out with biblical references that, this has been God's plan for women from all time, that we are uniquely built to be a gift to the world.
Momnipotent actually was the book that you and I spoke about when A Seeking Heart first started back in 2015. So I will actually pull out that that podcast that still exists over on Podbean, thanks to Bird Box Media. We'll reshare that, because I really think one of the things about a telltale sign of a good Catholic book or any good spiritual reading is that it's timeless. Like it's not just when it launches that people should be reading about it and looking at it, but it should be this book that regardless of when you stumble upon it, it's going to bless you. And I think Momnipotent is absolutely one of those books. So I will definitely reshare that link. And the interview, which I just pulled out Alyssa Bormes' interview, Catechism of Hockey, because Wine is going to be doing that over the summer as our book club. It was the second interview I'd ever done in my life. Kind of funny.
I don't listen to my old stuff because I know it's cringy.
Yeah, I must have prayed for humility because, well, there it was.
You learn by doing it.
Exactly. And it's good sometimes to go back and listen too, because not only just the nuggets of wisdom that God reveals in those interviews, reveals when we're speaking as women to women. Sometimes it's, go back, be humble, ignore what you had to say and listen to the other person, for sure. So so the essay in this beautiful, I just want to talk a little bit about the actual book.
Yeah, I can't take credit for that, so I can brag about it. It's beautiful.
Well, let's just, because I love one of the other manuals they have is the Spiritual Warfare Manual with the essay from Dr. Paul Thigpen, who is like one of my heroes of faith. Love that man. But they're like these faux leather covers. They're the perfect size for pocketbook. I actually on Monday's show said it's a perfect size for your pocket. And I was like, no, I meant pocketbook, unless you're like wearing overalls, right?
A giant back pocket there.
Remember the 80s, the combs were like this big.
God. I had the sweetest comb, at the roller rink. Oh my gosh.
Yep. We all had these giant combs and we stick them in our back pockets, and you don't even know how we sat down.
I know.
The side, I don't know if you can see here, is like this nice silver, beautiful, shiny. Just a great resource to keep nearby. So like your glove box, your drawer at work, your pocketbook, not actually your pocket.
Unless.
And I've always loved the way that they present a book. 10 books does
such a great job. Beautiful.
They really do. Talk about timeless. These are timeless.
Yes, and I love that it's like this thing can wear. Like I can throw it in a bag, and I'm not worried the cover is going to start coming off, like with a paperback book or whatever. Like you're meant to keep this, right? This is meant to last. And I usually I keep one that's in my room because this is a resource for me. I know technically my name's on it, but I don't read that. I don't read the essay, but I like those resources in the back, and so it's a beautiful, beautiful resource for that.
They really, I have just started going through them, but I don't know about you, but I have a prayer corner. It's actually pretty much have taken over the whole living room with my books, but I do have a special, I go through seasons, where I have different things that I like to pray. I'm doing the consecration right now. So I have my consecration book. I have a day-by-day purgatory book that I read every day and pray for souls. And now I have this added to it to kind of go through the prayers at the back. Sometimes I know when I want to pray, and other days I'm like, I know I have to, but blank.
Right.
And that's when having a manual is pretty helpful.
Yeah.
So tell us about the essay. What can we find in the essay? What inspired it? Like, tell us all about it, girlfriend.
Before I wrote it, I spent some time in prayer, and I really spent a lot of time reflecting on like what would, like, I was just asking God, what do you want me to, what do you want women to hear? What do you want them to know about themselves? And what can I tell them? So I spent a lot of time reflecting on that. And what I came out with was, first of all, Mary as our guide. So Mary, the ideal woman, right? But in some ways, I think sometimes she feels inaccessible to us because she's perfect. I can't relate to that, but really, truly, she's meant to be our model for womanhood, and she lived a very real human life here on Earth with all the messes that implies. She was sinless and had no original sin, so she was different from us in that way. But she still suffered in this world in so many ways that I think we can readily relate to. So I looked at Our Lady and the different kinds of virtues and the ways in which her life story is an example to us. The ways in which the things she did and said, she said very few things that we have record of, but she did say things, that those things are an example to us. Those things are teaching moments for us. And I very much wanted the essay to be kind of like going through Mary's life, maybe looking through like a photo album and like, tell me about this day, Mary, you know, like, tell me about what this means and why you did that, and kind of looking at the different kinds of womanly virtues as Mary lived them out and what that can mean for us today. You know, I think it's really important to look at those beautiful things, those beautiful moments, but then make the next step, not just stay there like, oh, beautiful, Mary, so inspiring, but then bring it into your own real life, you know, because I think sometimes that's where we mess up, because we have the beautiful things over here, the mess that I'm living in over here, and we need to connect those things.
I think one of the things that you reminded me of is that I demonize Mary. I make her a deity. I make her a god. I forget she was a woman just like us. And the only reason she was sinless is because she really cooperated with the grace that God had for her. Like, she was full of grace and the importance of grace. When you look at Mary and her everyday, ordinary life, like, do you see, can you truly see yourself, like how she is a model for you, like as a mom or just as a wife or a woman?
Right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, you know, looking at some of the gifts that I looked at, some of those womanly gifts, like starting with the first one, receptivity, right? I think Mary's such a beautiful example of that, because inside of that moment at the Annunciation where the angel Gabriel came to her and asked her if she would be the mother of God, I love to just reflect on the power that God gave to Mary in that moment. Like, he was waiting for her consent. He was waiting for her to say yes. And of course, we know she did say yes, but she said yes with some knowledge, because she was familiar with scripture, that this was going to cost her, that this was not going to be an easy thing. Even just the very first little bit that she asked about, like, how am I going to, you know, be a mom when I don't have a husband, and, you know, sticky stuff. And as a woman, as a real human being, she would have been concerned and worried about all of those things and wondering about how all of that was going to play out. So I love to just think about Mary's power in that moment where God's asking her, like, choose yes, that beautiful, generous receptivity to God's will, or choose yourself, right? And so often we women, we don't have often archangels coming to visit us and ask us if we'll be the mother of God, but we do have moments in our days where we're asked to choose, where we're called to choose between the will of God and what me, for self-preservation perhaps, you know, in sort of a self-seeking way. So I think just reflecting on that Mary responded with that beautiful, generous yes, and the gift, that the salvation that brought to all of humanity as a result of it. What a huge, powerful thing. We have that same power in our lives, not perhaps to be the mother of God, but to cooperate with God's saving power in our own lives and in the lives of the people that we love, that he's placed in our homes and in our families.
I think that word cooperate with God's grace, cooperate with God's will, is so powerful, because it's a hard decision some days. Like, I have this prayer that I want to say, your will be done, but you know what comes out of my mouth? My will.
Yeah, I get it.
Like, Lord, let me explain how I think this would work best.
Yeah, I love that. I love those prayer sessions when it's really just like, here's my agenda, and then if you could do this, and then have this work out this way. Like, we work out all the details, right? When God's only asking us to say yes and to be open to his will, because his plan is so much better than the dumb little plan we have on our clipboards, right? I mean, like, come on. But we can know that intellectually, but then it's a very human thing to hesitate to say yes, to hesitate to open ourselves up and leave ourselves vulnerable in that way. That goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve, right? That was the same struggle that Eve had, trusting in God's goodness. Satan didn't tempt Eve by saying, oh, look at this delicious fruit, come bite this fruit, right? It was, God doesn't want good things for you. He's lying to you. He just kind of placed that little seed of doubt in her mind, and she entertained it. So often we do too.
Oh yeah. I was just in confession, and I said to the priest, I think I'm the devil's playground sometimes. Like, I give him way too many opportunities to do his evil in my own little brain. I mean, sometimes it's just to myself. You know,
Sure.
I fall for his lies for my own lack of self-worth, or you know, and I don't want to give him an inch. And I think that's where I look to our Blessed Mother. I mean, like, that image of her just stomping on his head,
Yeah.
you know, and knowing that that image comes from her ability to cooperate, back to that, cooperate with what God wanted for her, knowing that it was always the best, like Romans 8:28 is always going to be the good. The other thing you talked about that I really appreciated was the gift of sensitivity.
Yeah.
You know, you start that chapter by saying, you know, the movie ends and your family all looks at you and your face is all puffy. And, you know, I think that sometimes we look at being sensitive as being weak. You know, we want to be strong. So tell us a little bit about the gift of sensitivity.
Yeah. So we're not all criers, but I am. And that's okay. And that's something that I've learned to accept about myself as part of who God made me to be. And that, and all women are, in some way, shape, or form, sensitive in a uniquely feminine way, that we are tuned into the feelings of other people. We're tuned into the nuances of relationships. We are masters of relationship. And I think that's such a beautiful gift to ourselves, but also to all of humanity, because we are the ones in our homes, in our families, in our workplaces, wherever God's put you in the world as a woman. He's put you there to be a teacher in the art of love, a teacher in the art of caring for other human beings, someone who's going to manage those relationships, not in a manipulative kind of way, but in a way of teaching other people to truly see others for who they are, the precious human beings they are, to see their feelings and their needs, their even smallest needs. You know, sometimes that's the most meaningful thing. I think our culture sometimes dismisses this kind of sensitivity as weakness, like, oh, we can't have, you know, there's no crying in baseball, right? But it's really about, it's not even just about like the crying, right? It's about being tuned into your fellow human beings, whether that's your toddler or your teenager or your spouse or your boss or your coworker, that we are put on this planet to connect with other human beings. And, you know, those of us who live those authentic relationships, we know there's nothing more important than that. You can be a powerful person in the boardroom and, you know, make all kinds of money and all of that. But at the end of the day, what matters are your connections with other human beings. What matters to every human being is relationship. And we women know that. It's written on our hearts in a way that's different from men. And I think it's by appreciating that and acknowledging the fact that this is a gift that God's given me that I'm meant to use to help the people in my life to feel uniquely known and loved. Who doesn't want that? I mean, that's all any of us wants, to be seen, right? And St. John Paul II so beautifully said, women see with the eyes of their heart. That's we do. We do. And what a gift that is. What a gift it is to be seen that way. We all know it when we experience it. What a gift it is to have that unique ability and to be called by God to use it to serve and to love the people that he's placed in our lives.
That is so eye-opening, so beautiful, seeing with the eyes like of God. I think that for very many years myself, like, I put up these walls to be a tough girl, and I didn't allow myself to see the world through God's eyes at all.
Right.
I saw it through Allison's, and it was skewed and often definitely not the reality. And even if it was the actual reality, knowing that God sees deeper, you know, that God sees people's hearts, and what he sees is their goodness. And so I would miss their goodness a lot, because every single person created in God's likeness and image, there's a goodness there somewhere, even if we are unable to see it because maybe the lies of the devil whispering in our ears, or just our interactions with that person. I know there's people in my life that, when I allowed myself to see them with this gift of sensitivity, to see them as God saw them, it transferred the relationship, transformed. It didn't change our interactions because that person was still that person, but but how I came upon it, which was very healing and very empowering for me not to be hurt anymore. So sensitivity doesn't mean that, you know, you put up the wall and you can't you make yourself vulnerable, but in a way with God, it's a different vulnerability. It's a
It
strength instead
is.
of a
And
weakness.
our culture doesn't get that. It doesn't recognize that. It doesn't celebrate that. We kind of buy into this notion, and I think it's so ironic that in order to be successful, we need to like apply a man's definition of success to our lives. And there's nothing more sexist than that, right? Like to tell me I need to be someone other than who God made me to be, the person I know in my heart of hearts that God made me to be. I need to squash that and adopt this new kind of definition of success in order to be happy in the world. And that's the lie so many of us have bought. It's tempting to believe it, but God made us as a unique gift, and squashing that, it's only going to hurt ourselves and then ultimately hurt the people that are around us.
Amen. We have time for one more gift, and it's one that I hadn't really thought of as a gift. I'd heard of the other ones, generosity, compassion, but this gift of beauty that you included in your essay, again, we're talking with Danielle Bean, and we're talking about Manual for Women out from TAN Books. This was new, this gift of beauty. Tell us a little bit about why that's included and how that is a gift.
Right. Well, we women, of course, we are uniquely beautiful. I mean, the world gets that. It knows that, right? It exploits that oftentimes, unfortunately. But look at all of the history of art in the world, right? Celebrating the beauty of the physical presence of women, right? That we're uniquely beautiful. We're different from men in that way. And that's something to be celebrated and appreciated and enjoyed. That is part of God's plan for us. Because part of what we learn in the theology of the body is that our physical selves are an expression of our spiritual selves. So there's a physical truth about women's natural beauty and the ways that we're different from men that's reflective of an equally important spiritual truth about who we are as women, who we are as feminine creatures, that we are uniquely beautiful and we're meant to be that gift of beauty in the world. So not only do we have that beauty and we can inspire that beauty, we can inspire others to turn toward God, because our beauty, of course, is a reflection of the beauty of God, right? Anything beautiful in the world, anything good in the world is a reflection of the goodness and the beauty of God. So in a unique way, what an honorable position women have to be that reflection, to be the apex of God's creation here on earth, that we're so beautiful that we can inspire others to think about and turn toward the beauty of God in that way. But then spiritually, again, I look to Mary's example and the ways in which she had an appreciation for beauty, and that we also have that. And this is uniquely connected to the gift of sensitivity that we talked about. But I love to look at those points in the gospel stories, and we see it twice where there's major things going on, right? The birth of Jesus in one case, and then the finding of Jesus in the temple when they're all flustered and they've lost Jesus, and then they finally find him and he says this weird thing to Mary, like, why were you even looking for me? Are you kidding me, kid? Right? So inside of those moments, which are like deeply dramatic human moments, right? What do the Gospels tell us that Mary did? She didn't do anything, right? She kept these things and she reflected on them in her heart. What a beautiful image that is. What a beautiful example that is for us as women to recognize we have that unique capacity to reflect on our relationships, to see the beauty in those moments and the beauty of what God is working out in our lives, in our relationships with our fellow human beings and with our family members, with our husbands, with our children, and to reflect on those in our hearts. We appreciate beauty, we see it, and we have a unique capacity for pointing the world's attention toward it.
If only I had been born in the Rubenesque period. I could have been a model. So there's the beauty I see.
Yep.
You know? But I think that I joke, but really to celebrate who we are instead of tearing ourselves down, and just to see that there's beauty everywhere. And I love the way that you express that in your essay. Again, talk with Danielle Bean, Manual for Women. I love that you included that to remind us to look at the gift of beauty, that we really can reflect on those and ponder the beauty we see around us. Danielle, it is always such a pleasure to spend time with you and to hear your wonderful thoughts on faith and spirituality, and of course on womanhood. You just have such a gift that the Lord has given you to see women in such a beautiful way. And I thank you so much for sharing those talents, not only in your writing, but with us here today at A Seeking Heart.
Thanks for having me, Allison. It's been a joy talking with you.
So how can we get a copy of this amazing manual?
So it's at all major booksellers. Go to Amazon, go to Barnes and Noble, but also tanbooks.com. If you want to buy directly from the sellers, you might even bump into, depending on when you're listening to this, a promo code there where you can get a discount. And so, check it out at tanbooks.com.
Excellent. And where can we follow all the wonderful things that Danielle Bean is up to these days?
Oh, well, if you're on social media, I'm Danielle Bean on pretty much everything, or you can go to daniellebean.com and check out whatever is going on in my life.
And you have a podcast yourself. Can you tell us, as we exit, just a little bit about that and where we can hear that?
Yeah, so my podcast is called Girlfriends, and I'm actually planning this afternoon. I'm going to record an episode with my husband for the first time, male guest on Girlfriends. So really, Girlfriends is really about connecting with Catholic women about all those things we care about, from the deeply spiritual stuff, or as deep as I'm going to get, and then just really practical stuff like health and wellness and relationships and productivity and those stuff that I care about. So generally, I'm just talking about and offering tips and ideas and advice, but also mixing in some interviews with authors and people of note like Allison Gingras and her Stay Connected series. So occasionally we'll get a guest like that. So yeah, it's been a joy to do that podcast. It's been a wonderful way to connect with real women living out real lives in the Catholic Church.
You're very generous with your words and with your time. And where is that podcast? Is that on your website, or is that
actually hosted by Ascension? So they help me out with production now. So go to ascensionpress.com and click on their podcast tab. Girlfriends is among several really great titles there, so you want to check them all out.
Wonderful. Thank you again to Danielle Bean, and Tan Books is offering a giveaway of Manual for Women, and you can find that on reconciledtoyou.com, or if you are listening or watching on Facebook, you go to the giveaway tab and click on that. There's a raffle copter for you to enter for that. And I also have a surprise package of 3 books that will also be included in your winnings, and that is till Monday. Again, my thanks to Danielle Bean for being with us today. You have been listening to A Seeking Heart, distributed through Breadbox Media. God bless.